Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Ratchet down the music a bit, leave a little bit in the background, as I'm wont to do. Today, we're going to cover a topic that relates to some questions that were asked by one of my viewers in a previous uh, segment regarding passion. So, I'm going to title this talk Passion Perfected. Passions Perfected. I'm going to start out defining those things like I like to do because, uh, like most things, if we don't have a common understanding of the terms we're talking about, we're rarely going to have a common understanding on the other end when we discuss the topic. So, I want to talk about the word passion. Um, Sorry, I just came in looking for something. Passion. Most people think of that word as something having to do with, uh, hey, Mom, you're on, uh, having something to do with romantic love, with sex, even. Um, don't immediately go to the broader sense of the word or even the broadest sense of the word. So, in a broader sense, passion is essentially, as I would define it, a focus of spiritual energy. Okay, so someone who is passionate about uh, hip hop music would, have a certain kind of a playlist that they would go to in times of trouble. Someone who is passionate about classical music would have a very different playlist. Um, in a more spiritual sense, though, passion is the overarching focus of kind of your spirit. And that tends to be more of a religious thing. So it might be that in fact your religion is certain kind of music, and you eat, sleep, breathe that. All your dreams are around that music, either making it or uh, helping to promote it online, whatever. And that's a kind of passion. Um, And to the extent that it becomes a focal point of your life, this is what I would deem a spiritual passion. Um, in a broader sense, uh, that I think is important to mention, passion can also describe the arc of your whole life in terms of, or many lives, in the pursuit of passions. So, this is why you hear terms like the passion of Jesus, the passion of St. Mark, etc. Uh, the lives of so-called spiritual figures are often thought of as what is called a passion. This comes from a usage that goes back to the Middle Ages. Very common way of experiencing the life of a figure, Jesus or Moses or some famous figure from the Bible or other tradition, was in what they called a passion play, where the life of that personage would play out, and you would see the progression of their spiritual life laid out as sort of an ideal for others to follow. Um, that's a sense that I really want to touch home on and extend the thought of that to what you might not think of as very spiritual lives. Um, for instance, if you read a biography of Albert Einstein, for instance, or a figure like Beethoven, another example, their lifetime will read like a passion. What are the characteristics of a passion? It's basically a pursuit of passion, varying levels of passion, varying focus of passion that constitute a progress towards the goal of a journey, or many journeys. We only really see the journey of one lifetime. So, uh, some of the steps in your individual passion could seem pretty dark, some pretty light, some alternate lightness and darkness. And that idea of life being a passion, I think, is a very important one to way to view passion in a spiritual sense. Okay, so some of the questions that we had brought up: how to find passion. Um, that's an interesting question. I think the truth is that passion finds you. Uh, we all have our unique individual interests. We all go through life experiencing new things, and I think anybody who has experienced much of life has had a situation where something occurred. They met somebody, they went to a particular place, maybe a museum, maybe a library. They found a book or something, or they found a podcast that bang just hit something in them and turned on a little knob of inspiration and caused them to go down, a new focus, at least for a time. And this is this is how you find passion. And I know it's tough if you're one of these people, like I know a number of people, my wife included, who really hasn't found her passion yet and is still searching. And it's very frustrating because, especially in the modern day, there are a lot of profiteers from this search for passion. That's basically all of commercial advertising, is looking for people who are passionless and trying to give them a passion related to your product. And to the extent that they can make money doing that, that is an excellent way to make money. You can make money doing that even if the only product you're selling is your own voice, your own message. And the self-help industry is full of people who want to tell you what your passion is and give you a passion and give you a path to passion. And is Rob going to do that? No, because that wouldn't be your path. And one of the core fundamental teachings of Omnism is that every path is individual. There are similarities, certainly. There are people who collectively focus on a spiritual path, and these people will follow that path in many different directions. They'll follow it as Christians, they'll follow it as Muslims, they'll follow it as Hindus, they'll follow it as New Age spiritualists, they will follow it in all sorts of ways. And there's no wrong passion per se, but passions can lead you astray. Uh, just as, if you have a passion for pornography, that becomes the focus of your life, that's rather a dark passion to get into. It doesn't really lead anywhere that is productive, usually. Now, who knows? Maybe it will lead you to a career making porn and you'll make $1 million and you'll think you had the most successful life in the world. Could be. Could be. I'm not gonna say that's not a worthy path to follow. Um, Not for me to judge where that's leading. What I can tell you is passion is a part of every life. It's a part of the system of training souls. It's what makes souls get up in the morning and want to go through the day. And that's why, I have an earlier talk called Passion Makes the Multiverse Go Around. It's really what makes everything tick. And without it, there would be no point to life. So find passion where you will. Just be selective and conscious that you are focusing on something. Because every bit of attention, every bit of consciousness you focus on one passion is going to be tying up resources, tying up memories, tying up energy, spiritual energy in that passion. And make sure that that's where you want to tie up your energies. And nobody finds it easy to focus on one passion, even when you find your ultimate passion in life, like an Einstein. And you'd like to be, finding new theories all day long. Well, you still have normal creature needs the need for companionship, the need for feeling part of a community, the need to want to participate in your community as a leader. And so, you find Einstein, besides spending so much time inventing the theory of relativity and other things that he worked on, spent a lot of time involved in the nuclear weapon discussion, trying, as a pacifist, trying to alert the government to the dangers of building such weapons and having to deal with such weapons. He spent a lot of time thinking about God, in fact, and capturing his feelings on that. Spent a lot of time cultivating the public image. Uh, he maintained a marriage. I don't think it was all that successful a marriage, but he did devote some of his time to maintaining a personal life. And this is pretty normal for most people. So when I say you'll have passions, you'll have many passions, but generally, if you ask anybody at any point in their life, there will be one thing that they're most passionate about, that they really have their energy behind. If they have free time and they're relaxed and able to focus, that's just what they're going to go focus on. It might be current events, it might be humanitarian organization, it might be a church organization, it might be a social organization, it might be a family even. And there are no wrong passions. The only thing that could be possibly wrong is not managing your passions with conscious thinking. If you go through life unconscious of your passions, you're liable to get addicted to less healthy passions. And especially when you're, pretty much cradle to grave exposed to commercial advertising, that's almost a guarantee. If you have an empty cup sitting there, it's going to get filled full of the most convenient liquid. And the most convenient liquid for the mind right now comes from social media or streaming media, which are both basically designed to indoctrinate you, to make you part of a community that's going to get a certain kind of advertising. That's how they make their money. That's why Facebook exists. They don't exist to provide a wonderful platform for people to share their cat pictures. That may be what they say, but the truth is they live off ad revenue. Where does that ad revenue come from? It comes from companies that want to get in front of your specific eyeballs because of content that you followed. So they're kind of finding your passions so they can follow them and steer them towards their products. So, in a way, it's sort of a blind leading the blind situation. If you're not involved consciously in what you do, you have folks that are totally blind to your needs and wants. They only care about your dollars, your eyeballs, care less what emotional damage they do or whatever. It's not my fault. I'm just putting up the advertisements that people pay me to put up. I'm just a wallpaper hanger. And that's basically the attitude that companies have towards the propaganda and advertising that they indoctrinate people with. So being conscious is, I think, if you want to find passion, a true passion, become more conscious of who you are, what you like, what your goals are, your real goals, not just, fake goals like, oh, I want to be happy today, so I'm going to spend $50 on a new shirt or whatever, bag, or, you can't get a bag for $50 anymore, I guess, but you kind of know what I'm saying. That's not, a passion for shopping is, I guess, a passion, but it certainly is not a healthy one. And I don't know. If there may be somebody out there that can spend money on something and actually get a permanent sense of happiness out of buying that thing. That's how I feel about having a good computer to do these podcasts on. If it does it reliably, I'm very happy to have a new computer. Do I want to buy another one tomorrow? No, not as long as this one is making me happy. So this is the difference between, a vanity purchase and something that contributes to happiness, I guess. So a house may be a happiness deliverer to the extent that it allows you to create this comfortable space that is your own. And some people are very passionate about their homes. And to the extent that that gives them a satisfaction, passionate about their garden, passionate about whatever hobby it is, it really doesn't matter. Um, do passions change across reincarnations? Of course they do. And in the grander scheme of things, when you are between lives, between incarnations, this is the time when you will have remembrance of all the passions you've had. And you will get the benefit of connecting with people that have similar resonances. And spiritual resonances are built around passions. Passions for other souls you like to hang out with. This is how we develop a tribe of souls that we frequently contract with to share an incarnation, do some role playing in an incarnation. Oh, you were my husband in the last life. Let me try being the husband now. This kind of thing. I want to be your dog for a life. And people will make all sorts of agreements in heaven, and those are agreements they make based upon passions and preferences. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Why? Because not everyone is cut out to be a god. Let's face it, it's hard being a god. It's hard being a more responsible soul. That's why hardly anybody really wants to be president anymore. It's a really hard job. You take a lot of hard knocks. You have to make really tough decisions. During 4-year presidency, the average president, at least from the physical age, looking age, will age in those 4 years about 10 or 20 years from that increased level of responsibility and stress, effectively. So this is what's so great about the system that you have to work in, this system of karma, the game of souls, I call it, is that you can play it any which way you want. And the multiverse will arrange that every soul gets all the opportunities, all the choices they need to make to figure out where they belong, what they're happy with, what they're unhappy with, and find a suitable place for them to reside at any given time. And that residence is essentially an incarnation. You can think of each incarnation as a home you live in for a period of time. The human incarnation is a home you live in for roughly about 70 to 80 years. There are other incarnations where you could spend a lot more time or a lot less, depending on what it is. And you can incarnate as anything. You could incarnate as the soul of Rob's computer, and you would have some direct bearing on how this computer behaves, whether it gets zapped again and I lose another hard disk, or it starts malfunctioning another way and I need to replace it, or if it, gives me interesting autocorrect suggestions that seem to defy the laws of whatever AI has programmed the autocorrect algorithm for whatever keyboard you're using. This is an example of how passions could shift and the kinds of things you might focus on in future incarnations. And as I've told you, there are incarnations at all 3 levels of the soul's development: physical levels, the spiritual levels, and the God levels. You don't have to hit them all. In fact, you may never hit them all. Some souls will be perfectly happy having incarnations that only go as deep as the physical level. The physical level incarnations focus on dealing with the specific problems at hand of that incarnation vehicle. And I'm sure you've known people like that don't really seem to have any passion in their lives. They do the things that people do, they get jobs, they generally perform very well at those jobs, very reliably. They buy stuff, they have kids, but you kind of don't have a sense that there is some overarching purpose to that life, other than just doing what you're supposed to do as a human being. Now, that would be a person kind of living in the physical realms, and maybe they haven't found a passion that takes them beyond that yet, because it's when you find a more spiritual passion, a passion for art, a passion for uh, music, or science, or service to others. Those are the kind of passions that start entering the spiritual realm. And you can tell the difference. You can definitely tell the difference between that kind of a passion and a physical passion. Not to say either is right or wrong. These are choices each soul has, and you're given all the opportunities you could possibly want to try them. And it's not uncommon for a soul to choose a path that takes them into the spiritual levels and decide, you know what, that's causes a lot of pain for me, a lot of suffering, because I can't have everything I want, and my desires for things, my desire for fulfillment of passions exceeds my passion. And you can make a conscious decision, you know what, next time I'm not going to incarnate that way again. I'm going to have a more simple physical incarnation. And this is much easier to do in other vessels than the human form. The human form was and is designed to allow souls of all levels to experience all sorts of passions, light and dark. However, it won't always be that case. And this is something you need to watch out for in thinking about your passions in this incarnation, because, as I've told you, this is a very special time we're in. A time where we're testing, doing the final test, a new set of laws for this game of souls, a new version of karma. And after this testing is done, the human soul vessel, as the chosen species for that, is going to change its role. It's not going to be needed for testing anymore. It's going to be needed for implementation. When you're testing something, you want to hit all the corner cases, all the possible things that could go wrong with the new law, so you could put in a fix for it, a bug fix or a patch or some new corollary, some new little small part of the law, so you don't have people cheating in certain ways. And yes, the game of souls is like any other game that souls will try to cheat. They will try to get ahead of others in the game unfairly. And this has been a huge part of why it's taken so long to perfect this new law, and why humanity has spent so many millennia as a chosen species and has failed almost completely several times. And before that, other species. At any rate, so what I want to convey is, particularly now, you need to be conscious about your passions and where they lead you. The biggest thing to be concerned about is if your passions are of a lower level, if they're very physical passions, if they're very oriented towards being a cog in a machine and being satisfied with being a cog in a machine, that kind of soul will be attracted to the other universe, the Borg universe, which is an authoritarian place. It's designed around the idea of, instead of the law of karma, is designed to maximize the production of creative souls, souls that are going to become gods, souls that are going to be managing the more responsible positions in the multiverse. The god of art, the god of music, the god of science, And yes, there will be, and there are gods of all these things. This is how gods work now. This is the transition we went through. This is why there aren't gods running around throwing thunderbolts around and or riding the chariot of the sun. That was an old paradigm for old gods under old rules of karma, an old game of souls. And as I've told you, that game had to evolve this way because if it was pushed any other way, it would have violated the rule of free will. This game was created with the free will, with the approval of the souls playing it. Everyone has a choice to incarnate, and they make that choice consciously or unconsciously, but they do make a choice to do this. God didn't force any of this on anyone. Now, God was a pretty persuasive arguer for why things should be one way or another. Persuasion is not force. Inspiration is not force. And this is the difference between how the Borg side gods and the God side gods work. The gods on God's team, in God's universe, work through inspiration and persuasion. And always leave the choice up to you and don't punish any soul for making the wrong choice. Even if it is going to take them at the end of their life off to the other universe to be stewarded by Borg and told exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, or else. And, there are people I see in communist China that are perfectly happy living under that kind of a system. They don't have a lot of freedom. They don't want a lot of freedom. They don't have a lot of choice. They don't want a lot of choice. This is a fundamental difference between Asian culture and Western culture, really, because as those cultures have developed, in Asian culture, it's still very much one where you look to your parents to select a bride for you. In fact, that's still absolutely the norm in India, although it's not so much in China anymore. It's very much a part of other cultures in Asia still. The Muslim cultures, for instance, have more of a sense of you don't so much pick your bride as introduce them to your family, and your family has to accept them. And if they don't, this is going to be a big problem for you. Whereas in the West, the culture has evolved to the point where it's like, okay, you pick your own mate, you make your own bed, you take the responsibility for any consequences of that. And this more responsible approach to life is what it's like living on the God side of the equation. Okay? In Borg's universe, you don't have to take responsibility for anything because nothing is really your fault. It's all imposed upon you. And if you like that paradigm, if you're not a person who likes to take personal responsibility and own your choices, own what you do, by all means, you're going to be happy over on that side. Maybe happier than you would be if you had to make a choice at every corner. But at some point, you might regret that choice. And you won't have the opportunity after this event is done to come back to humanity and try this again. We don't need confused, dark souls to take humanity where it needs to go next, which is taking a new set of laws, this new game of souls, to the universe and teaching it to other species we encounter. Just like Star Trek. That's what we're going to be up to in the next age of man. Is it going to start tomorrow? No. It may not even be built on the technology that we're developing right now. We may have another major collapse that sets humanity back to the Stone Age. That can happen. And we'll start from there on the next day of creation. And that may be just what we need to develop the right set of passions for a new humanity. This is where we made mistakes before. In the Atlantean age, folks had too much power. They had too much technology. They weren't ready for it spiritually. And you could argue that most of humanity isn't ready for what's coming spiritually either. But that's kind of a dark viewpoint, because that doesn't understand that we have this thing called reincarnation. And when a soul tribe, a species, a soul vessel evolves, it changes the levels of souls that it welcomes. And humanity is going to become a God species. That means that the range of levels of souls that it will attract will become more limited. It will be able to attract souls of even the highest levels, the God levels, and it won't attract so many souls of the lower levels, or it won't attract ones that aren't ready to contribute in a healthy manner at that level and grow. And so it's going to attract souls that sort of resonate to personal growth, personal development, and social growth, social development, not so me focused as we see today. I hope that gives you a sense of, think about your passions and where you fit in the future, and if there's a good mapping for what you're passionate about to what you may get in the next lifetime. It's a great time to be alive, because in the process of finishing this experiment together, we all get a free level up. Even if you totally botched this life, you go to heaven, whatever heaven you're attracted to at the end of this life, you're going to find, oh, I got to level up. Cool. Maybe cool. It might be really bad, because it may be putting you at a level that you're uncomfortable with. And you'll want to go running and screaming from that level and go back to the lower levels. And this is another way that this whole thing is stressing souls to figure out where they belong in the next day of creation, the 8th day of creation. So let's see. Another question, how to manage challenges in exercising our passion. I think I've addressed that pretty well. Again, it's something you have to make conscious decisions about. You can't do everything. You can't be everything. No matter what commercial advertising tells you, you can't have it all. And this needs to especially be stressed for women, because they've been told lie after lie after lie about how you can have it all, and it's just not true. It's not true that you can have it all, and it's not true that anybody would want to have it all, because having it all is like being the president of your little universe. It's stressful. You can't manage. You've only got so much brain power. You've only got so many hands. You can only manage so many balls at the same time to be juggled before you start going a little crazy. And tell me that half the world today living in this you can have it all society isn't crazy to some extent or another. Loose cannons ready to blow up at a moment's, the moment there's a little extra stress, it turns into this big, huge thing that causes them to blow up. Usually blow up at their own families, the ones closest to them. And this is exactly why the divorce rate is so high now. We have too high expectations of others and of ourselves, and they're never going to be met. And this is what happens when you think I can have it all. You've got to make choices. You got to make difficult choices. And yes, they are difficult choices. They're supposed to be difficult. This is supposed to be a challenge. It's not, your average phone game that's trying to get you hooked enough so you'll play 100 levels, and then they start getting you to buy extra crap so you can pass the next 100 levels because you're already addicted to the game. The Game of Souls doesn't work like that. It doesn't use cheap tricks to pull you in. It's not trying to get anything from you. The multiverse doesn't need anything from any soul. Why? Because it will grow naturally to fill the gaps that are necessary. If there are not souls trained and ready to do a certain task, build a new galaxy, build a new universe, the energy of that need will translate to a focus of attraction for souls to fill that gap. And in the God side of the equation, in the God universe and the universes of other gods that respect other souls, allow them to have free choice, don't take their spiritual energy and use it for their own nefarious purposes. That attraction, they have faith. That attraction, if it's to something good, if I am a god, okay, a god has a universe. This is something I teach. Everybody has a universe. You don't really know it until you get to be a god level, and it doesn't become something permanent until you get to the god level. The lower levels, your universe kind of comes and goes as you either are playing in a god's universe, the god or another god or Borg or another Borgish god. If you go against what they want in their universe, you wink out to this alternate universe of yours to take the actions that were inconsistent with that universe. And so that whatever you were going to do doesn't happen and doesn't cause whatever problem it was going to cause for the plans going on in that universe. This is how the Mandela effect works. When you get to God level, then your wink out universe becomes more real. You start seeing, oh, I've seen all the times that I didn't mesh with another god and I got winked out to my own universe. I see the characteristics of that universe, how it's been shaped till now. And now I start realizing, oh, okay, I can change that shape. I can grow on it. This is what the creation process is like when you get your own universe. And it's no different than the creation process of the first soul, God, or the creation process of any other soul that has reached the God level. And the benefit that these other souls have when they reach God level is they have many examples to draw from. They can look at other God's universes, not everything, you can't look completely under God's kimono, but you can look at the save games and say, okay, there are these save games in God's universe. Maybe a lot of them are save games around this last phase of this experiment, the Gaia experiment, the human experiment. Maybe I like starting games in the Middle Ages and riffing on that tune. I want to have a more perfect Middle Age kingdom. Or I want to create a universe that's kind of like Game of Thrones going on forever. Okay, you can do that. And to the extent that there are works of art like that, Tolkien has his own universe, constantly going on Middle-earth trajectories, and people love to play in that universe for a while. Maybe only in their dreams, maybe even for an incarnation, I don't know. Could be a good place to pursue passions, maybe a place you want to head next. Will you get to head there? Not necessarily, because each universe gets to define the entry requirements for those who are going to reside there. This is another reason you have to be careful about your passions, because if you get into one of the dark universes where your focus is maybe dark sexual passions, let's say that turns out to be your focus and becomes core to your being in this lifetime. You may go to one of these dark universes and spend literally an eternity in a universe run by a god that has experienced every dark sexual passion you could possibly imagine and worse. And their task, now that they're a god, is teaching other souls falling down this path the error of their ways by punishing them with the worst things they can think of. This is how the dark universes work, and this is why you need to be really careful managing your passions. There are consequences. Anybody that tells you, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die, this Epicurean philosophy is lying to you. They're giving you a sweet little story that says you can do anything, when in fact there are consequences. It may be a game, but it's a game that has consequences. And yes, you do have the choice to change the path you're on, but it becomes more difficult the further down a particular path you go. So if you are a young soul watching this and thinking about, well, what's my passion? I would worry more about, what shouldn't be my passion? What things might be my passion and are leading me in a direction that I really don't want to go? Now, you may be just fine with that. You may want to go down that path, and that's absolutely okay. If you follow the path of the sexual deviant, you might end up as one of the gods of that specialty. And they are great teachers of dark lessons. That's why we need gods like that. They're not unnecessary. They're not something we necessarily need to get rid of. As long as there's a soul who wants to be in their universe, they serve a useful purpose. And even after that, if they're just in their universe all by themselves with no students, just virtual souls running around doing whatever they told them to, that serves a purpose too, because it's like a prison for that soul. That universe, the entire universe, becomes a prison for a dark soul. And this is essentially how the correction system works in the multiverse. This is God's correction system for souls, because souls are immortal. God doesn't kill souls. Well, anymore. He's threatened to, and it can be a very persuasive tool. Has been used, as I've told you in my books, in the past as a last resort. The thing is that he's not really killing a soul. He's causing it to unexist. But with a save game that can cause to re-exist at that same state. This is how this whole save game thing works. In God's universe, which is a subset of the entire multiverse, because ultimately everything goes back to the creations of the first soul. Okay, that's what makes the first soul so special. That's why the first soul, God, is able and willing to give you so much freedom, so many choices that other gods don't. Doesn't give a damn if you worship God, if you believe in God. Doesn't matter. You're playing the game anyway, and you're being part of creating the rules yourself. God just loves watching his family executing this stuff and coming up with new ideas. It's like the greatest reality show ever. And imagine how gratifying that is to the ultimate creator, to watch his creation in action on autopilot and get to come down and play the game once in a while with the kids. See what the latest generation of kids are up to. That's how the game works now. That's how it's going to be working to a larger extent in the 8th day of creation. Because the 7th day was the process of God himself waking up to this new law, coming through this new system to a full understanding of who he was as a soul. A new understanding, in fact, because God didn't know himself as well as he does now, having risen through the ranks like any other soul, incarnating with absolutely no memory of any past lives, and somehow getting back to the same level and finding, oh, you know what? I see how this law has been implemented. The family done pretty well. We're going to keep it. Okay, let's go on to day 8. That's what we're going through right now. And that is a gift to you. A gift for your participation is getting to be involved in this wonderful event. And for those of you who may be, like challenged by being alive today, it's like, I don't know what to focus on. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got commitments. I have to feed myself, and that's getting increasingly difficult. I've got to find a place to live. I've got to deal with all of this blah, 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 blah bullshit in my culture, in my country, in the world. Hey, souls were begging to be human right now. And you don't have to do anything. You get a free level up at the end of this life. Just sit back and watch. Sit back and enjoy it like God is doing. Because it's going to be really interesting to see how this all falls out. And the truth is, if you have an important part to play in this game, in this round, this final round of Jeopardy, you'll know it. You'll feel an inspiration, and you'll feel a passion to do something, to go get involved in something, to go make a difference. And this is how you know you have a real passion. When you just feel this inspiration you've got to follow. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I can't tell you. It might be to get out of a dysfunctional relationship. That is a huge accomplishment for somebody that has a pattern of being in dysfunctional relationships, letting themselves be used and manipulated by others, or using and manipulating others. Most of the good paths involve freedom, giving someone else freedom, or taking back freedom that you should have for yourself, asserting your autonomy, asserting, not forcing. Responsible decisions, responsible creation is what it's all about. And responsible means that you're doing it consciously. You're thinking about the consequences, both positive and negative, and thinking about it not only from a selfish standpoint, but from a standpoint of, yes, you have made commitments. You've got family. You've got a job. You've got people counting on you. Okay? How do I honor those commitments? Do I need to honor those commitments? If I'm not going to honor them, how am I going to get out of them in the least karmically sinful way? And if you're going to do nothing else in this life, learning what a karmic sin is personally for you in your path is a really important thing. Because until you come to an understanding of what those karmic sins are, you'll never know what you have to forgive yourself for. And ultimately, that's what karma is all about. It's not about some other soul forgiving you. It's about you forgiving yourself for what you've done. Acknowledging and forgiving. Okay? You don't forgive yourself by ignoring the guilt, shoving it down, saying, "Oh, that's all in the past. I'm not dealing with it." No, that's avoidance. That's not dealing with karmic sin. Dealing with it responsibly is acknowledging, accepting, doing what one can to make amends, and moving on. Moving on with the knowledge that I know what I did wrong. I know that was wrong, and I'm going to try not to do it again. I'm going to be more conscious next time of what I'm doing. Look before I leap. And this then ties all the way back to passion, because the only way you're ever going to really get to pursue a higher passion is by doing more looking before you leap. Because in any given lifetime, and this gets back to the overarching idea of a whole life being a passion. If you become impatient in life, impatient to find passion, impatient to find meaning, you will give your life meanings that really are not very satisfying. You will give your life meanings that maybe fill a need of your family, your parents, your workplace, your boss, but do not really satisfy any of your passion. You will give your life meaning through owning things, and to a large extent, that kind of meaning is meaningless, because those things end up owning you to a large extent. Having a home isn't a nice thing, but ask any homeowner, it takes a lot of maintenance. It's a big responsibility. Creates a lot of other responsibilities towards the other people living in your home, towards the job that's supporting you making payments on the home, and limits what you can do. And there's nothing worse than getting to the point where I know what my passion is, but I can't pursue it. I can't be brave enough to pursue it because I have so many legacy things that I've focused on that I can't get out of without, feeling like I'm committing a karmic sin. That's a very dark place to get to in a life. Not that it's not useful to get there, because you learn something from that too. And hopefully you will carry it forward to future lives and start looking before you leap. And so I think if I'm going to leave you with one thought about passion, it's that: look before you leap. When you find a real, honest to God spiritual passion, you will know the difference. You will absolutely know the difference between a passion that is driving you towards something that is meaningful to you over the course of many lifetimes, versus something that is going to satisfy a short-term need or fill a gap that you feel as a natural part of being human. Everybody has those gaps. I mean, that's part of human nature. That's why this soul vehicle exists. If we were androids, which there are android people out there, they don't have physical needs. They don't have sex. They don't have the need to eat. They don't need money. They can do anything they want, anytime they want, as long as it's within the limits of what their society allows. Now, if you don't like humanity, if you don't like these challenges, you'll get a chance next time maybe to incarnate as in an android species. Nothing wrong with that. It's a very different experience than being human. And, I don't know how to explain to you what those different experiences are like without experiencing them. I know because I personally have experienced thousands of my past lives, going back to some really weird things. I mean, most of those thousands went by so quickly that I can't even remember more than the vaguest perception of being in that form. There's maybe a handful, maybe a dozen or so that I have a more clear idea of who I was, what I was in that life. But I can tell you that until you've learned about many different soul vehicles, you're not going to be ready to be a god. Maybe human gods develop relatively easy from human souls. And a lot of the gods of humanity are of that variety. They represent human ideas. The god of democracy, the god of communism. This is how gods work now. You don't have the god of thunder. Well, you do have a god of thunder, but that's not such a powerful position because there's not a lot of variability in what thunder can do. It has to operate by the laws of physics. And the laws of physics are, like the law of karma, something that has evolved. And there are old gods that don't really have much power anymore, that are more than happy to let a stand-in come and take their place and go and incarnate again, and are coming to humanity in droves because they've heard this is the A ticket to becoming one of the new gods of ideas. And those are the gods that really matter in day 8 of creation. It's going to be about ideas, not power. The power of ideas, not the power of force. Yes, force will be needed. Force can accomplish many things. But what we are seeing today in spades is that ideas are proving to have much more power than force. This is how communist countries have effectively undermined the Western style democracy, the Western style economy. Free market economies are being undermined actively by countries, organizations not willing to play by the rules. This is how the Communist Party works. This is how large global multinational corporations work. They're not willing to play by the rules. They want to make their own rules. Sound a little bit like Borg? Yes. Those forces are essentially being manned by the minions of Borg. Some of the minions of Borg are low-level ones that like to be dominated, and others are the seekers of higher-level posts in the Borg organization who want to dominate and control others. And there's a spot for them, but it's not going to be on God's green earth for much longer. This day 7 is almost done, and those souls have pretty much set their course. And they're going to die, and they're not coming back. They're going to go to the other Earth in the other universe, or they're going to go to one of the Borg worlds, or one of the species outside of humanity that we're going to have to go teach the law of karma to. Are they going to be real battles? Of course. That's the only way to get through to somebody who is fighting you. You can't love them to death. It doesn't work. It's absurd. All you do is create a victim out of yourself. What good does that do? So go into your passions, not being a victim, not being a victimizer, and see where it leads you. It's not easy, and you may not get anywhere, but the journey is most of the fun. And take time to enjoy the journey. Every day is going to be something new for you to see if you just have your eyes wide open. New people to meet, new ways of looking at things. And that's what gaining experience is like. Every new perspective you gain is a few more experience points in the game of souls. And you don't know how far you are from the next level. You'll start getting an inkling when you're getting close, because the levels happen in Messiah lives. You'll have a passion life, a life of, wow. I mean, if I went through everything that got me to this moment in my life, it would read like this strange, picaresque novel of going here, going there, going, oh, weird thing happened, weird, and suddenly it leads up to this point, and it's like, wow, everything happened for a reason. If one of these little incidents hadn't happened just that way, I would have ended up in a totally different place. Who knows, might have been a happier place, but it wouldn't be as advanced a place spiritually, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. So trust the system, trust the game. It doesn't play you, it lets you play it. There will be other souls that try to play you, That's them playing the game in a very unhealthy manner, in a manner that's not consistent with staying around for very long in God's universe. Okay, so maybe cut them a little slack. You know, you can look at, I mean, that's the way I view people trying to push me around today. It's like, okay, you're setting your path. I have to deal with that. I can't just ignore what you're doing to me. I can't pretend it's not happening. I'm not going to roll over and let you walk on top of me, but I'm not going to let it change my course. I'm not going to let you interfere with where I've gotten spiritually. And that sort of healthy fighting spirit is really what the Game of Souls is all about. You can't play spirituality as a passive game. I'm sorry, I don't care what you hear from your Eastern guru, philosophy guru and stuff like that about, oh, you just need to meditate to nirvana. This is bullshit. And I don't mind saying it. It's illusory, and it is not bringing you any closer to your personal spiritual enlightenment. It's bringing you closer to being a slave to their definition of enlightenment. And being a slave to anything, even if it's something that makes you happy, makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel safe and warm and loved. This is a prison of sorts. You're like a pet of that guru, and you're in a cage of their creation, their ideology. And those cages tend, under stress, to become very cultish. When those cages feel threatened, members turn against other members. Those that were once your best supporters will suddenly be your biggest enemies. Ooh, they're a splitter. You know, watch Life of Brian again, Monty Python's Life of Brian, if you want to see some of the dark pulls that spirituality can take, because they cover pretty much everything there. At any rate, I've talked long enough. We're right at about an hour. Hope you enjoyed that one. And look for me again on the Omnist Hour with Rob Tromp. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.